Imagine reading a history book your entire life, only to be told one day that it's all just fiction. For an entire generation of Star Wars fans, that's exactly what happened. We're not talking about a simple matter of preference. This is about a fundamental fracture in the fandom. On one side, the new Disney canon. On the other, decades of stories now dismissed as legends. For those who grew up with that original expanded universe, the feeling isn't just disappointment. It's a deep and logical sense of betrayal. This isn't about a few new movies they didn't like. This is about the perceived erasure of their universe. Today, we're exploring why so many longtime fans reject the new canon, and it all begins with a single decree in 2014 that shattered the timeline forever. To really get the frustration, you first have to understand what was lost. Before Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012, the Star Wars story was governed by a tiered system. At the very top were the 6 films by George Lucas himself, G-Canon. But beneath that was a whole universe of TV shows, games, and, most importantly, the books and comics that made up the Expanded Universe, or EU. For over 30 years, the EU was the official continuation of the saga. It's where we all went to find out what happened after Return of the Jedi. For all intents and purposes, it was the sequel trilogy. Then, in April of 2014, Lucasfilm dropped a bombshell. To give total creative freedom to the makers of the new sequel films, the entire expanded universe was being wiped from the official canon. They assured everyone it wasn't being deleted, just rebranded as legends, stories from an alternate timeline. But for the fans who had poured decades of their time, money, and passion into these stories, it felt like someone was telling them their entire history was no longer valid. The promise was a new, sleeker canon where everything would matter. But in reality, it meant a massive, sprawling history. A history many considered the very heart of Star Wars was being tossed aside to make way for a new product. This wasn't just losing a few favorite stories. It was the nullification of a whole timeline, and it's the foundational grievance where all the other problems begin. One of the first things people felt was just how much smaller the galaxy suddenly seemed. The Legends timeline was immense, a rich tapestry stretching thousands of years into the past and future. It explored ages the films never dreamed of touching, from the dawn of the Jedi, thousands of years before the Republic, through the epic wars of the Old Republic, and far into the future with the New Jedi Order and the Legacy era, more than a century after the movies. These weren't just footnotes, they were fully fleshed out eras with their own distinct feelings, technologies, and cultures. Legends gave us stories that weren't just about Jedi versus Sith. It explored military tactics, alien societies that didn't care about the Force, and the dangerous frontiers of galactic exploration. The new canon, by comparison, feels so much more constrained. It's almost always tethered to the timeline of the movies and the main TV shows. Its official eras, like the High Republic or Age of Rebellion, mostly just exist to add context to the Skywalker story. For many old-school fans, this feels like a deliberate step back. The EU was a boundless sandbox where creators could tell almost any kind of story imaginable. The new canon often feels more like it exists just to fill in the blanks of a story we already know the ending to. The result is a galaxy that feels smaller, shallower, and a lot less mysterious than the one that was taken away. It feels like canon is playing it safe, prioritizing a tightly managed brand over the wild, exploratory soul that made the expanded universe so special. But this is where it gets really personal. This is the most painful point for Legends fans. What they did to Luke, Han, and Leia. For decades, an entire generation of fans knew what happened to our heroes after the credits rolled on Return of the Jedi. In Legends, Luke Skywalker didn't run away from his failures. He faced them, learned from them, and built something better. He became a wise and powerful Grand Master, rebuilding the Jedi Order to be more compassionate and human. He found love with a complex and incredible former enemy, Mara Jade, and he raised a son, Ben Skywalker. He became the legend we always knew he was destined to be. Han and Leia's story was just as rich. They stayed together through unbelievable tragedy and struggle, guiding the New Republic while raising 3 powerful children, the twins Jason and Jaina and their younger brother, Anakin Solo. Theirs was a story of an unbreakable love and building a family legacy. It was a real happily ever after. even if it was earned through constant struggle. The canon sequels threw all of that in the garbage. Luke became a broken, bitter hermit who turned his back on the galaxy. Han and Leia were split up, their love story ending in failure as their son fell to darkness. They were recast as failures, their victories in the original trilogy completely undone, just to reset the board for a new set of heroes. For fans who grew up with the mature, accomplished, and heroic versions from Legends, this felt like a profound betrayal. It was a regression, not a progression, and it torched decades of beloved character growth just to manufacture new conflict. Even when they bring back beloved figures like Grand Admiral Thrawn, he often feels like a watered-down imitation, which only frustrates fans more by feeling like empty fan service. Beyond the characters, there's a powerful argument that the new canon has simply lost its nerve. The old expanded universe was not afraid to take huge creative risks and tell dark, complex stories that changed the galaxy forever. The best example is the new Jedi Order series. This 19-book epic introduced the Yuuzhan Vong, a terrifying species of religious fanatics from outside the galaxy who were immune to the Force. Their invasion was apocalyptic on a scale Star Wars had never seen. Major planets were destroyed, trillions died, and no one was safe. Chewbacca's death in the very first book was a shocking and brutal declaration that the stakes were real. The war pushed our heroes into impossible moral corners and permanently changed the galaxy. It was controversial for sure, but it was undeniably bold. By contrast, many new canon stories are criticized for being safe and having low stakes. When so many stories are set between movies where we already know the ending, the tension just isn't there. There seems to be a fear of making permanent large-scale changes. Instead of truly new ideas, we often get recycled concepts from Legends, but smaller and less impactful. Palpatine's return in canon, for instance, struck many as a far less developed and less satisfying echo of his resurrection in the classic Dark Empire comics. This isn't to say there aren't amazing stories in the new canon. Andor and many of the new comics are rightfully praised. But as a whole, the universe feels more predictable. Legends was a wild frontier where anything could happen. Canon often feels like a carefully curated museum, where every piece is placed just so to not upset the main exhibit. So why do Legends fans hate canon? It's not just stubbornness, it's a logical response to a deep and genuine sense of loss. It's the loss of a vast, detailed history they spent years of their lives exploring. It's the loss of the heroic futures they were promised for Luke, Han, and Leia. And it's the loss of the bold, ambitious storytelling that made the galaxy feel infinite. From a corporate point of view, the 2014 decision to wipe the slate clean was practical. It made the universe easier for new people to get into and easier to manage as a brand. But in doing that, they alienated a generation of fans who had already given their hearts to a complete saga. They were told that the universe they loved was no longer the real one. Ultimately, the divide between Legends and canon is a tale of two different ways of creating. Legends was a chaotic, collaborative universe built over decades by hundreds of different voices. Canon is a centralized, top-down creation designed for perfect multimedia synergy. Neither one is automatically wrong, but for those of us who grew up in that older, wilder galaxy, the new one will always feel a little smaller, a little safer, and a little less like home. But that's my take on the heart of the frustration. So now I turn the question over to you. Which philosophy do you connect with more? Are you a die-hard Legends loyalist, a firm believer in the new canon, or do you find things to love in both worlds? And which Legends character or story from the old chronicles do you miss the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy these deep dives into the Star Wars universe, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next time we pull a new truth from the archives. Thanks for watching.